"Cassie, you coming to happy hour?" The words bounced off her like rain on glass. Friday, 6:47 p.m., Brooklyn Methodist Hospital corridor, and Cassie Monroe's hand was already reaching for her phone, not to answer Trina's question, but to check the subway schedule. 17 minutes until the next L train. If she ran, she could make it. "Can't," she said, adjusting the strap of her crossbody bag. "Mom's waiting." It wasn't a lie. It also wasn't the whole truth. What she didn't say: "I don't have the energy to pretend I'm okay for another 2 hours." The hospital exit doors opened into cold November air. Cassie pushed through the Friday evening crowd, couples holding hands, groups laughing too loud, everyone moving like they had somewhere better to be. She walked faster. The gold hoop in her right ear caught the streetlight as she turned the corner toward the Bedford Avenue station. Inside, the subway platform smelled like brake dust and old coffee. The LED board blinked. L train, 3 min. Cassie positioned herself at the yellow line, right where the third car always stopped. She'd learned this months ago. Third car meant fewer people, better chance of a seat. The train arrived in a screech of metal and compressed air. Doors opened. She stepped inside, and the world collapsed quietly. The car was packed. Wall-to-wall bodies pressed together in that specific New York silence, where everyone pretends no one else exists. Cassie gripped her bag against her chest. Her headphones were already in her ears, but the music wasn't playing. She couldn't remember the last time she'd actually listened to anything. The headphones were just armor now. Her eyes scanned the space with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. No seats. Of course not. It was Friday. Everyone was exhausted. Everyone was going home. Then, movement. A man stood up. Not dramatically. Not with eye contact or a smile or that performative "look how nice I am" gesture that always felt like a transaction. He just stood, adjusted the worn black backpack on his shoulder, and moved toward the door. Casual. Unremarkable. The seat beside where he'd been sitting, that corner spot, the refuge for people who wanted to disappear, became empty. Cassie hesitated, because accepting kindness from a stranger in New York felt like breaking an unspoken rule. You don't make eye contact. You don't smile. You don't acknowledge the gesture because acknowledging it means you owe something. But her legs decided before her brain could finish the argument. She sat down. The relief was physical. Her shoulders dropped. Her jaw unclenched. For the first time in 10 hours, she could breathe without feeling like she was stealing the air from someone else. The man didn't look at her. He stood near the door, one hand gripping the overhead bar, staring at nothing. His face was angular, tired in a way that matched her own. Korean features, dark eyes with faint lines at the corners. He wore a gray polo shirt with a company logo she couldn't quite read. Some maintenance company, probably. His work boots were scuffed. The train lurched forward. Cassie closed her eyes. 1 station passed, then 2, then 3. She opened her eyes. He was still standing there. 4 stations. 5. He hadn't gotten off. The realization crept in slowly, like cold water rising. He didn't stand up because he was leaving. He stood up so I could sit down. Her heart did something unfamiliar, a small, dangerous flutter. The train slowed. Lorimer Street Station. The doors opened. He finally moved, stepping toward the exit with the same quiet efficiency he'd shown when he stood. No backward glance. No acknowledgement that anything had happened. But as he stepped onto the platform, Cassie saw him pause. Just for a second. His hand adjusted the strap of his backpack, and his head turned. Not fully. Just a fraction. Like he was checking something behind him. Their eyes met through the closing subway doors. 2 seconds. Maybe less. Then the train pulled away, and he was gone. Cassie sat frozen in the corner seat, her bag still clutched against her chest, her heart beating faster than it should. The woman beside her shifted, pulling out her phone. The man across the aisle coughed, The world kept moving, but something had shifted. She pulled out her phone, fingers hovering over Trina's name in her contacts. Started typing. You won't believe what just happened. Deleted it. Because what had happened? A stranger gave up his seat. People did that sometimes. It didn't mean anything. But he didn't get off for 5 stations. Cassie closed her eyes again, leaning her head against the cool window. Outside, Brooklyn blurred past in streaks of light and shadow. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a question formed. Small and quiet and absolutely terrifying. Why do I want to see him again? If you've ever wondered whether a small gesture could change everything, whether kindness from a stranger could feel more like home than anything you've known in years, then you already understand why this story matters. Stay with us. Subscribe to hear more stories about the connections we don't see coming and the courage it takes to let them in. Monday morning arrived with rain and regret. Cassie stood on the Bedford Avenue platform at 6:52 a.m., coffee in one hand, phone in the other, pretending to read an article she'd already forgotten. She wasn't fooling anyone, least of all herself. She was looking for him. This is ridiculous, she thought. You don't even know his name. The L train pulled in. She stepped into the third car, heart hammering against her ribs, scanned the seats. Nothing. Just the usual Monday morning crowd. Blank faces, dead eyes, everyone silently negotiating the treaty of personal space. She sat down in a different spot this time, near the middle. Told herself it was fine. Told herself it didn't matter. The train doors closed. The car lurched forward. And then she saw him. He was standing near the opposite door, backpack slung over one shoulder, staring at his phone. Same gray polo, same work boots. Same quiet, unremarkable presence that somehow felt louder than everyone else combined. He looked up. Their eyes met. For a moment, just a heartbeat, his expression shifted. Not a smile. Not recognition exactly. Just acknowledgement. Like he'd been looking for her too, and was surprised to find her there. He tilted his chin in the smallest possible nod. Cassie's breath caught. She returned the gesture before she could stop herself. Then he did something unexpected. He moved. Not toward the door, not away from her, but to the seat directly across the aisle. Not next to her. That would have been too much, too intrusive, but close enough that the space between them felt deliberate. They sat in silence. Cassie kept her eyes on her phone, but she wasn't reading anymore. She was hyper-aware of everything, the way he shifted his backpack to the floor between his feet, the way his hands rested on his knees, the way he didn't try to fill the silence with small talk or forced pleasantries. The train rocked gently as it moved through the tunnel. Outside the windows, darkness punctuated by bursts of station lights. Inside, the quiet hum of strangers pretending not to exist. Then the train braked hard. Cassie pitched forward. Her coffee cup slipped from her hand. She grabbed for it, missed, and suddenly there was a hand in front of her face. His hand, gripping the overhead bar, creating a barrier between her and the standing passengers who'd lurched backward. He didn't say anything, didn't look at her, just held the position until the train stabilized, then slowly lowered his arm. Cassie's heart was a drum. Thank you. He glanced at her, just briefly, just enough for her to see the faint trace of concern in his dark eyes. You okay? His voice was low, quiet, the kind of voice that didn't demand attention but somehow commanded it anyway. Yeah, she managed. I'm fine. Just wasn't expecting that. He nodded, didn't press, didn't ask follow-up questions, didn't perform concern. The train pulled into Union Square. Half the car emptied out. New passengers flooded in. The man picked up his backpack, slung it over his shoulder, and moved, not to the door, but to the now empty seat beside Cassie. She froze. He sat down, leaving a respectful 6 inches of space between them. Pulled out his phone. Didn't look at her. But the space between them felt like a conversation. This is insane, Cassie thought. We haven't even introduced ourselves. And yet, sitting beside him felt like the most natural thing in the world. When? You're smiling. Cassie looked up from her microscope to find Trina Wells leaning against the lab counter, arms crossed, one eyebrow raised in that specific expression that meant, I see you, and you're not getting out of this. I'm not smiling, Cassie said, turning back to the slide. You were 30 seconds ago. I watched you walk in this morning, and you looked... Trina paused, searching for the word. Lighter. What happened? Did your mom's doctor give good news? Did you win the lottery? Did you finally block Marcus's number? Nothing happened. Cassie Monroe, we've been friends for 6 years. I know your nothing happened face, and this ain't it. Cassie sighed, removed the slide, and turned to face her friend. Trina was wearing purple scrubs today, her curly hair pulled back with a headband, large hoop earrings catching the fluorescent light. She had that look, the one that said she'd stand there all day if necessary. Fine, Cassie said quietly. There's a guy. Trina's eyes went wide. A guy? Cassie, you haven't talked about a man since Marcus. It's not like that. It's not anything really, just... She trailed off, not sure how to explain it. There's a guy on the subway. Trina pulled up a stool, fully invested now. Go on. He gave me his seat. Friday night. Didn't say anything. Didn't make it weird, just stood up so I could sit. And then I saw him again this morning, and he... Cassie stopped, realizing how ridiculous this sounded out loud. He what? He sat next to me. Trina blinked. That's it? I know it sounds stupid. No, I'm not saying it's stupid. I'm just... Cassie, you never talk about men. Not since Marcus. And now you're telling me some stranger on the subway made you smile just by sitting next to you? Trina leaned forward, voice dropping. What's his name? I don't know. What does he do? I don't know. Some kind of maintenance work, I think. Have you talked to him? Not really. Just, thank you. When he kept me from falling this morning. Trina's expression softened. He protected you? It wasn't dramatic. The train braked hard and he just put his arm out, created a barrier, then sat down like nothing happened. Girl. Trina reached across the counter, gripping Cassie's hand. That's not nothing. That's intention. Men don't do that by accident. Cassie pulled her hand back gently. Don't make it into something it's not. It's just nice. That's all. A nice stranger who happens to take the same train. Do you want to see him again? The question hung in the air between them. Cassie thought about this morning, the way her heart had jumped when she saw him standing by the door, the way the silence between them had felt like its own language, the way she'd spent the entire train ride hyper-aware of his presence beside her. I don't know, she lied. Trina smiled. Yes, you do. And for what it's worth, I'm glad. You deserve someone who makes you feel lighter, even if it's just a stranger on the subway. You're different. Daniel Park looked up from the HVAC unit he'd been inspecting to find Mr. Kim standing in the doorway, arms crossed, that knowing expression on his weathered face. Different how? Daniel asked, returning his attention to the wiring. You're smiling more, walking lighter. Either you're in love or you're planning to quit, and you don't look like the quitting type. Daniel felt heat creep up the back of his neck. I'm not in love. Didn't say you were. Said you looked like you might be. Mr. Kim stepped into the mechanical room, his tool belt jingling softly. Known you 3 years, kid. You always do good work, never complain, show up on time. But you got this weight about you, like you're carrying something heavy. Past few days, though, that weight's gone. Daniel straightened, wiping his hands on his work pants. He wanted to deny it, wanted to brush it off with some joke about getting better sleep or finally fixing his coffee maker. But Mr. Kim had been more of a father to him than his actual father had in the past decade, and lying to him felt wrong. There's someone, Daniel admitted quietly. It's not. We haven't even talked, really. Just being near them feels different. Daniel met his boss's eyes. Yeah. Mr. Kim nodded slowly, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. That's how it starts. The quiet ones always hit the hardest. He clapped Daniel on the shoulder. Don't run from it, kid. Running's easier, but it don't get you anywhere. After Mr. Kim left, Daniel pulled out his phone, stared at the alarm labeled L Train, Bedford Ave, for a long moment. He'd set it 3 months ago when he'd started this job, timing his commute to avoid crowds. But in the past 4 days, he'd been leaving 10 minutes earlier than necessary. Because she was always on the 6:52 train. The woman with tired eyes and a gold hoop in her right ear. The one who wore scrubs under a faded gray sweatshirt and carried exhaustion like a second skin. The one who'd sat in the corner seat Friday night with her eyes closed, breathing like she was finally safe. He didn't know her name. Didn't know where she worked or where she lived or anything about her life beyond those 20 minutes on the L train every morning. But he knew the way her shoulders dropped when she sat down. Knew the way she held her coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping her tethered to the world. Knew the way she'd looked at him this morning when he'd caught her from falling. Not with gratitude, exactly, but with something deeper. Recognition, maybe. Like she'd been waiting for someone to see her and was surprised that someone finally had. Daniel turned off his phone and shoved it back in his pocket. This is stupid, he thought. You don't even know her. But he wanted to, and that terrified him more than anything. Non perdu. Tuesday morning, 6:52 a.m. Cassie stepped onto the subway platform and saw him immediately. He was standing in his usual spot, third car, left side near the door. When she approached, he glanced up from his phone and did that small chin-tilt nod again. Not a smile, not a wave, just acknowledgement. She returned it. The train arrived. They got on together, not side by side, but in that careful choreography of strangers who were becoming something else without naming it. He moved to the back. She followed. He sat in the corner seat. She sat beside him, leaving that respectful 6 inches of space. The train pulled away from the station. Neither of them spoke. But when Cassie pulled out her phone and saw the notification, "Mom, can you stop at the pharmacy after work? I'm out of the blood pressure medication." Something in her chest tightened. Another task, another responsibility, another reason she couldn't just breathe for 5 minutes without someone needing something. She must have made a sound, a small sigh, barely audible, because the man beside her shifted slightly. Not toward her, not invasively, just present. "Long day ahead?" he asked quietly. Cassie turned to look at him, surprised. His eyes were still on his phone, giving her the space to answer or not answer without pressure. "Long week," she said. "Long year, honestly." He nodded, didn't ask for details, didn't offer empty platitudes, just nodded like he understood. The silence stretched between them, but it didn't feel awkward. It felt safe. "I'm Daniel," he said after a moment. Her heart skipped. "Cassie." "Nice to officially meet you, Cassie." "You too." They rode the rest of the way in silence, but everything had changed. They had names now. They existed to each other beyond gestures and glances. When the train pulled into Union Square, Daniel stood, adjusted his backpack, then paused, looking down at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked. It was such a simple question, but the weight of it felt enormous. "Yeah," Cassie said softly. "Same time." Sunmer. Friday came with rain. Cold, relentless November rain that turned the city gray and made every surface slick. Cassie's shift ran late. Equipment malfunction in the lab meant staying an extra hour to rerun samples, which meant missing the 6:52 train, which meant standing on the platform at 7:47 p.m. with no umbrella and a coat that wasn't quite warm enough. She texted her mom. "Running late. Be home by 9. The response came immediately. No rush, baby. I already ate. Be safe. Cassie pocketed her phone and stared at the LED board. L train. 4 min. She'd take it to her usual stop, then run the 3 blocks home in the rain. It would be fine. She'd been through worse. Cassie? She turned, startled. Daniel was standing a few feet away, backpack slung over one shoulder, holding a black umbrella. His work shift must have run late too. Hey, she said, surprised by how much relief flooded through her just seeing him. You're here late. Boiler emergency. You? Lab emergency. She smiled tiredly. Apparently we both have jobs that don't care about quitting time. He glanced at the rain pouring down beyond the platform entrance, then at her. You have an umbrella? No, but it's only 3 blocks from my stop. I'll survive. Daniel's expression shifted. Not concern exactly, but something close to it. I'm going the same direction. We can share. Cassie hesitated, because sharing an umbrella meant proximity, meant shoulders touching, meant crossing another invisible line in this strange, undefined thing growing between them. But the rain was coming down in sheets, and her coat was already damp, and she was so tired of pretending she didn't want the help. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. They walked side by side through the rain-soaked Brooklyn streets, Daniel holding the umbrella low enough to cover both of them. Their shoulders brushed with every step, not accidentally, but because there was only so much space under the canopy, and neither of them was trying to avoid it anymore. You always look tired, Daniel said after a block of silence. Not like bad tired. Like someone who carries a lot. Cassie's breath caught. It was the same thing he'd said before, but now, walking together in the rain, close enough to feel his warmth, it hit differently. I do carry a lot, she admitted. The words came easier in the dark. My mom had a stroke a few months ago. Mild, but she needs help now. I'm taking night classes for a certification, working 10-hour shifts, and everyone keeps telling me I'm doing great, but I don't feel like I'm doing great. I feel like I'm barely holding on. She stopped walking, suddenly mortified. I'm sorry. I don't know why I just told you all that. Daniel stopped too, turning to face her. Rain drummed against the umbrella above them. The streetlight caught the angles of his face, the quiet intensity in his dark eyes. Don't apologize, he said. You're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to struggle. That doesn't make you weak. Something inside Cassie cracked. Not broke, cracked. Like a dam that had been holding back too much for too long, and finally found a safe place to leak. A tear slipped down her cheek before she could stop it. Daniel saw it. She knew he did because his expression shifted, softened. But he didn't comment, didn't ask questions. He just shifted the umbrella slightly, angling it to cover her better, and started walking again. Come on, he said gently. Let's get you home. They reached her building 10 minutes later. Cassie stopped under the awning, turning to face him. Rain poured down behind them, turning the street into a river of reflected light. Thank you, she said. For the umbrella. For... She trailed off, not sure how to finish. For listening? Daniel offered. Yeah, for that. He looked at her for a long moment, rain dripping from the edge of the umbrella, his dark eyes unreadable. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. Can I get your number? He asked. In case, I don't know, in case you need someone to share an umbrella with again. Cassie's heart did that dangerous flutter again. Yeah, I'd like that. They exchanged numbers in silence, thumbs moving over screens, the transaction feeling far more intimate than it should have been. When Daniel finally turned to leave, Cassie called after him. Daniel? He looked back. Why did you stand up that first night? On the train. He smiled. A small, barely there smile that transformed his entire face. Because you looked like you needed to sit down more than I did. Then he walked back into the rain, and Cassie stood under the awning watching him disappear into the Brooklyn night, her heart beating too fast, and her phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. Saturday afternoon, 2:30 p.m. Cassie sat in the corner booth of a small cafe 3 blocks from the hospital, nursing a cappuccino and trying to focus on her certification study guide. The words blurred together on the page, something about hematology protocols and quality assurance standards, but her brain refused to cooperate because her phone kept lighting up. Daniel, how's your Saturday? Cassie, studying. You? Daniel, fixing my sister's sink. She says I owe her because I'm the handy one. Cassie, are you the handy one? Daniel, I'm the one who dropped out of engineering school, so apparently yes. Cassie smiled at her phone, fingers hovering over the keyboard. She wanted to ask why he'd dropped out, wanted to know the story behind that admission. But before she could type anything, a shadow fell across her table. Cassie. She looked up, and her entire body went cold. Marcus Thornton stood beside her booth, hands in the pockets of his expensive leather jacket, that familiar smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. He looked exactly the same, impeccably groomed fade haircut, perfectly trimmed beard, confidence radiating from every pore. Marcus. Her voice came out flat. What are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing. This place is pretty far from your usual spots. He gestured to the empty seat across from her. Mind if I sit? Yes, she thought. But years of conditioning, years of making herself smaller, more agreeable, less difficult, made her hesitate. He took the hesitation as permission and slid into the booth. You look good, he said, eyes scanning her face with that proprietary gaze she'd once mistaken for affection. Tired, but good. Still working too hard? I'm fine. That's what you always said, even when you weren't. Marcus leaned back, completely at ease. I've been thinking about you, about us. I know things ended badly. You ended things, Cassie corrected, her voice sharper than she'd intended. You said I was too serious, too focused on work, that I never made time for you. Because you didn't. But I get it now. You were under pressure. Your mom, your job, all of it. I should have been more understanding. He reached across the table, fingers brushing toward her hand. I think we could try again. Do it right this time. Cassie pulled her hand back. Marcus, I'm not interested in trying again. His expression flickered. Just for a second. Just enough for her to see the irritation beneath the charm. You're seeing someone else? That's none of your business. So you are. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Let me guess. Some guy who tells you what you want to hear? Who makes you feel special because he doesn't challenge you? You didn't challenge me, Marcus. You exhausted me. There's a difference. She stood, gathering her books and her coffee cup. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. Progress. I have to go. Cassie, wait. No, we're done. We've been done for 8 months. And I'm finally okay with that. She walked out of the cafe without looking back, heart pounding, phone clutched in her hand. Outside, the November cold bit at her face. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing hard, trying to steady herself. Her phone buzzed. Daniel, sorry if I overshared. I don't usually talk about the college thing. She stared at the message, something warm uncurling in her chest. Then she typed, You didn't overshare. I liked hearing about it. Can I call you? The response came immediately. Yes. They talked for 40 minutes while Cassie walked aimlessly through Brooklyn, her study materials forgotten in her bag. Daniel told her about engineering school, how he'd lasted 3.5 years before realizing he was living his parents' dream, not his own. How he'd walked away weeks before graduation and hadn't spoken to his father since. My mom calls sometimes, he said quietly. Tries to convince me to go back, tells me it's not too late to finish, but every time I think about it, I can't breathe. Do they know you're working maintenance? Cassie asked. My sister does. She's the only one. Everyone else thinks I'm figuring things out and planning to return to school. I let them think that because it's easier than the truth. What's the truth? Silence. Then, that I'm happier now than I ever was in those classrooms. That I like fixing things with my hands. That I don't want to be an engineer just because my dad decided I should be when I was 12 years old. He paused. Does that sound pathetic? No, Cassie said firmly. It sounds brave. Brave. He laughed softly. I don't know about that. Feels more like failure most days. You're not a failure. You made a choice that cost you something. That's not failing. That's choosing yourself. Another silence. Then, thank you for saying that. Thank you for answering when I called. Cassie? His voice dropped lower. What happened today? You sounded off when you texted. She told him about Marcus, about the cafe, about the way her ex had looked at her like she was still his to claim, like the past 8 months hadn't happened. He said I never made time for him, Cassie said quietly. And maybe he was right. But he never understood that making time meant choosing between him and my mom. Between him and sleep. Between him and keeping my head above water. And he always wanted to be the priority. Always. You deserve someone who doesn't make you choose, Daniel said. His voice was steady, certain. You deserve someone who understands that love isn't about being the priority. It's about sharing the weight. Cassie stopped walking. She was standing in front of her building now, key in hand, phone pressed to her ear. Is that what you'd do? She asked, barely above a whisper. Share the weight? Yeah, Daniel said without hesitation. If you'd let me. Monday morning, 6:52 a.m. They sat side by side on the L train, close enough that their knees touched when the car rocked. Cassie had her coffee. Daniel had his backpack at his feet. Neither of them had spoken since boarding, but the silence felt different now, heavier with things unsaid. I've been thinking, Daniel said suddenly, about what you said Saturday. About Marcus. Cassie turned to look at him. What about it? You said he made you choose. And I need you to know I'd never do that. I know we're not. He paused, searching for words. I don't know what this is, but whatever it is, I'd never make you choose between me and the people you love, between me and taking care of yourself. Why? Cassie asked. The word came out sharper than she'd intended. Why do you care? Daniel met her eyes. Because I know what it's like to be told you're not enough as you are. My ex-girlfriend, Jessica, she wanted the ambitious Daniel, the one who was going to be a successful engineer with a corner office and a 6-figure salary. When I dropped out, she stayed for 6 months trying to fix me, trying to convince me to go back. And when I wouldn't, she left. He looked away, said I was wasting my potential, that I'd never be the man she thought I was. Daniel, I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you so you understand. I know what it's like to feel like you're failing someone just by being yourself, and I'd never do that to you. Ever. Cassie's throat tightened. She reached over and took his hand, just laced her fingers through his, there on the subway in front of strangers and morning commuters and the whole indifferent world. Coffee? She asked quietly. Before work? Daniel looked down at their joined hands, then back at her face. A slow smile spread across his features. Genuine this time. Unguarded. Yeah, he said. I'd really like that. They found a small diner 2 blocks from the hospital. The kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that cost $2 and tasted like it. They sat across from each other, knees bumping under the narrow table, steam rising from their cups. Tell me something you've never told anyone, Cassie said. Daniel raised an eyebrow. That's a heavy request for 7:30 on a Monday morning. You said you dropped out of engineering, but you never said what you wanted to do instead. He was quiet for a long moment, fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup. Then, I wanted to teach. High school shop class, maybe. Or community college. Something hands-on where I could help people who learn by doing, not just by reading textbooks. He laughed softly, self-deprecating. Sounds stupid, right? Throwing away an engineering degree to teach teenagers how to use power tools. It doesn't sound stupid at all. It sounds like you know what makes you happy. What about you? Daniel asked. What would you do if you didn't have to worry about money or your mom or certifications or any of it? Cassie considered the question. No one had asked her that in years, maybe ever. I'd travel, nothing fancy, just small towns, places with good local coffee and bookstores and people who aren't in a hurry. I'd wake up when I wanted, read for hours, not set an alarm for 2 weeks straight. That sounds perfect. It sounds impossible. Maybe. Daniel reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. But maybe not forever. They were 20 minutes late to work. Cassie didn't care. Trina cornered Cassie during lunch break, dragging her into the supply closet with a conspiratorial grin. Okay, spill. And don't you dare tell me nothing happened. Cassie tried to look innocent. I don't know what you're talking about. Girl, you walked in here 30 minutes late with the biggest smile on your face I've seen in literal years. Plus, you're wearing lip gloss. You never wear lip gloss to work. Trina crossed her arms. Who is he and when do I get to vet him? It's the subway guy. Subway guy has a name now? Daniel. Daniel, Trina repeated, drawing out the syllables. And what did Daniel do to make you show up late and glowing? We had coffee, talked. It's not a big deal. Cassie Monroe, you're a terrible liar. It's absolutely a big deal. Trina's expression softened. Is he good to you? Yeah. He's different. He doesn't want anything from me. Doesn't expect me to be anything other than what I am. And when I'm with him, I don't feel like I'm drowning. Baby. Trina pulled her into a hug. You deserve that. You deserve someone who makes you feel like you can breathe. When, that night, Cassie came home to find her mother waiting in the living room, a knowing look on her face. You've been different lately, Sharon Monroe said, patting the couch beside her. Lighter. Want to tell me why? Cassie sat down, toeing off her shoes. There's someone. His name is Daniel. And I really like him. Which terrifies me because I don't have space in my life for someone else. Between you and work and school. Stop. Sharon took her daughter's hand. Cassie, I love you more than anything in this world. But you can't build your entire life around taking care of me. I'm not going anywhere. And even if something happens, I wouldn't want your last memory of these years to be you sacrificing everything because you felt obligated. I don't feel obligated, Mom. I want to help you. I know you do. But there's a difference between helping and martyring yourself. And baby, you've been martyring yourself for months. Sharon squeezed her hand. If this Daniel makes you smile the way you've been smiling lately, then make space for him. You're allowed to be happy. Cassie's eyes burned. What if I mess it up? What if I'm too much or not enough or... Then you'll figure it out together. That's what people who care about each other do. They figure it out. Thursday morning, Cassie woke up to a text from Marcus. Marcus, we should talk. Really talk. Give me one more chance to explain. She deleted it without responding. Then she saw the next message. Marcus, I saw you with him, the guy from the subway. Cassie, you deserve someone who actually understands you. Not a stranger. Her stomach twisted. Marcus had been watching her, following her. Another message arrived before she could process the first two. Marcus, I'm not trying to scare you. I just want you to think about who he really is, what you're really giving up by shutting me out. Cassie's hands shook as she blocked his number. But the damage was done. Marcus's words had planted themselves in her brain like seeds of doubt. What are you really giving up? Who is he really? She'd known Daniel for 2 weeks. 2 weeks of subway rides and shared silences and one coffee date. What did she actually know about him beyond what he'd chosen to share? This is stupid, she told herself. Marcus is manipulating you. That's what he does. But the doubt remained. Friday morning, Cassie texted Daniel. Heavy workload this week. Probably won't make the usual train time. Sorry. She took the 7:15 train instead. Stood in a crowded car. Hated every second of it. Monday, same thing. Tuesday, same thing. Wednesday morning, her phone buzzed during her shift. Daniel, I hope everything's okay. I'm here if you need to talk. She stared at the message for 5 minutes before putting her phone away without responding. Friday evening, Cassie left work at her usual time. Took the 6:52 train out of habit, not thinking. Stepped into the third car, and saw Daniel standing by the door. He looked up when she entered. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Cassie turned and walked to the other end of the car. She saw his reflection in the window, the way his shoulders dropped, the way he looked down at his phone, the way he stood there for 3 more stops before getting off at Union Square. The corner seat beside where he'd been standing remained empty. No one took it. Saturday afternoon, Trina called. What did you do? Cassie was lying on her bed, staring at the ceiling. What do you mean? I just saw a man who looked like he'd lost his best friend sitting alone in the diner where you two had coffee. Asian guy, early 30s, work boots. I'm guessing that was Daniel? Cassie closed her eyes. Probably. Cassie, what happened? I got scared. Marcus texted me saying I don't really know Daniel, that I'm making a mistake, and I ran. I pushed him away before he could realize I'm not worth the effort. Girl, Trina's voice was sharp. You listen to me. Marcus is a manipulative asshole who can't stand that you're happy without him, and you're about to destroy something real because you're terrified of being happy. Do you hear yourself? What if Marcus is right, though? What if I don't really know Daniel? Do you trust him? Yes. Then that's all that matters. You don't need to know someone's entire history to know whether they're good for you. You feel it. And Cassie, you feel it with Daniel. I've seen it on your face every time you talk about him. Sunday night, Cassie's mom found her crying in the kitchen. Baby, what's wrong? I ruined it. I pushed him away, and now he probably hates me, and I don't know how to fix it. Sharon sat down beside her daughter, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Are you afraid of being happy or of not deserving it? Cassie looked at her mother, tears streaming down her face. Both. Listen to me. True love isn't heavy. True love shares. And if this Daniel is the man I think he is, the one who makes you smile just by existing, then he'll understand. But you have to give him the chance. You have to be brave enough to let him in. Monday morning, Cassie pulled out her phone and typed, I'm sorry for disappearing. Can you meet me tomorrow? I need to talk to you. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The response came 3 minutes later. Yes. Where? Cassie. The diner. 7:30 a.m. Daniel, I'll be there. Tuesday morning, 7:28 a.m. Cassie sat in the same booth where they'd had coffee that first time. Her hands were wrapped around a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. Her heart was hammering against her ribs. The bell above the door chimed. Daniel walked in. He looked tired, more tired than usual. His eyes found hers immediately, and something in his expression made her chest ache. Hope, maybe, or fear that she was about to break whatever fragile thing they'd built. He slid into the booth across from her. Didn't say anything. Just waited. I'm sorry, Cassie started. For disappearing. For ignoring your texts. For... Why? Daniel's voice was quiet. What happened? She told him everything. About Marcus. About the texts. About the doubt that had crept in and poisoned everything. I was scared, she finished. Scared that you'd realize I'm too much work. That my life is too complicated. That I'm not worth the effort. Daniel was silent for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and took her hand. Cassie, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear it. Really hear it. He squeezed her fingers. You're not too much. You're not too complicated. And you are absolutely worth the effort. Every single bit of it. You don't know that. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you take care of your mom even when you're exhausted. I know you work 10-hour shifts and still make time for certifications because you want to be better at your job. I know you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders and still manage to smile at strangers on the subway. That's not too much. That's incredible. Cassie's eyes burned. Marcus said, Marcus is an asshole who can't stand that you're happy without him. Don't let him take this from you. From us. Is there an us? Daniel smiled. A real smile. The kind that reached his eyes. I'd like there to be. If you would too. I would. The words came out choked. I really, really would. He stood up, moved to her side of the booth, and pulled her into a hug. Cassie buried her face in his shoulder and felt the dam inside her finally break. Not with sadness, but with relief. With the overwhelming realization that she wasn't alone anymore. I'm sorry I ran, she whispered against his shirt. I'm sorry I let you go 3 days without fighting for you. You texted. I should have texted harder. He pulled back just enough to look at her face. Don't shut me out again. Please. If you're scared, tell me. If Marcus texts you, tell me. If you need space, tell me. But don't just disappear. I can handle a lot of things, but not knowing if you're okay kills me. Okay, Cassie said. I promise. They were 45 minutes late to work. Again, neither of them cared. 2 weeks passed in a blur of coffee dates and subway rides and text messages that made Cassie smile at inappropriate times during work. She learned that Daniel's favorite food was his sister's kimchi jjigae, that he'd been terrified of dogs until he was 12, that he wanted kids someday, but was scared he'd be a terrible father like his own dad had been. She told him about the promotion she'd turned down, about the guilt that gnawed at her every time she looked at her mother, about the fear that she was wasting her potential by staying in a job that felt safe but small. You're not wasting anything, Daniel said one night as they sat on a bench outside her building. You're building, and building takes time. But happiness, Cassie learned, was always fragile. Wednesday afternoon, Daniel's phone rang during their lunch break. He glanced at the screen, and his entire face went pale. I have to take this, he said, standing abruptly and walking away from the table. Cassie watched through the diner window as he paced back and forth, one hand pressed to his forehead, his expression devastated. When he came back inside, his hands were shaking. What's wrong? Cassie asked immediately. My dad. Daniel's voice was hollow. He had a heart attack. He's in the hospital in Seoul. My mom says... He stopped, swallowing hard. She says I need to come home. Okay. We'll figure this out. When do you need to leave? Tomorrow. There's a flight tomorrow night. I'll be gone at least 2 weeks. Maybe more, depending on... He couldn't finish the sentence. Cassie reached across the table and gripped his hand. Then we have tonight and tomorrow. That's not nothing. Cassie, I don't know what I'm walking into. My family, they're going to push me to stay, to finish school, to stop wasting my life. And I don't know if I'm strong enough to fight them again. Yes, you are. Because you've already done it once. And because this time, you're not alone. He looked at her with something close to desperation. Come with me? Not to Korea. I know that's insane. But come with me to the airport tomorrow? I need to see your face before I get on that plane. Of course. Anything. Thursday evening, JFK Airport. Cassie and Daniel sat in the uncomfortable chairs near his gate, his backpack between them, her hand wrapped around his. This feels like goodbye, Daniel said quietly. It's not goodbye. It's see you later. What if I can't come back? What if my family... Then I'll wait. And when you're ready, you'll come back. Because this," she gestured between them, "is real. And real things don't just disappear because they get hard." Daniel pulled something from his pocket, his worn black backpack. "Keep this for me. Daniel, please, it's my proof that I'm coming back. Everything important is in here. My tools, my sister's bracelet, the subway tickets from every trip we took together." He smiled sadly. "I need to know you're keeping it safe, that you're keeping us safe." Cassie took the backpack, tears streaming down her face. "I'll keep it safe, I promise." The announcement came overhead. Final boarding call for Flight 204 to Seoul. Daniel stood. Cassie stood. They held each other in the middle of the crowded airport, strangers flowing around them like water around stones. "I'll text you when I land," he whispered into her hair. "You better." "Cassie? Yeah? Thank you. For seeing me. For staying. Always." He kissed her forehead, grabbed his small carry-on, and walked toward the gate. Turned back once, twice, 3 times, like he couldn't bear to let her out of his sight. Then he was gone. "That to your week 1. Daniel. Landed safely. My dad is stable. Surgery scheduled for Monday. Cassie. I'm glad. Thinking of you. Daniel. I miss you already. Cassie. Miss you too. Your backpack is on my couch, exactly where you left it. Week 2. Daniel. Surgery went well. Dad's recovering. Mom won't stop crying every time she looks at me. Cassie. She's probably just happy you're there. Daniel. She asked if I was coming back to school. I told her no. She cried harder. Cassie. I'm sorry. Daniel. Not your fault. I knew this would happen. Week 3. Daniel. My dad asked to see me today. First real conversation we've had in 5 years. Cassie. How did it go? Daniel. He said he was proud of me for making my own choice, even if he didn't understand it. Cassie. Daniel, that's huge. Daniel. Yeah, it is. I'm not sure what to do with it yet. Week 4. Daniel. I think I can come home next week. Dad's being discharged Friday. Mom has help now. Cassie. Really? Daniel. Really, I want to see you. I need to see you. Cassie. Then come home. I'll be here. Friday evening, 6:52 p.m. Cassie stood on the Bedford Avenue subway platform, clutching Daniel's backpack against her chest. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it over the sound of the arriving train. He'd texted an hour ago. Landed, heading to Brooklyn now. Meet me at our spot. The L train pulled in. Cassie stepped into the third car. And there he was, standing by the door, wearing the same gray work polo and cargo pants, his face tired but smiling, genuinely smiling. Their eyes met. Cassie crossed the car in 3 steps and threw her arms around him. Daniel caught her, lifting her off the ground, his face buried in her hair. You came back, she whispered. I told you I would. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other while the subway rocked gently through the tunnel. Other passengers stared. Neither of them cared. When they finally pulled apart, Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out something small and golden. Cassie's gold hoop earring, the one she'd almost lost on the subway months ago. You kept it, she breathed. I keep everything that matters. He fastened it gently into her ear, his fingers brushing her cheek. Then he kissed her, soft and certain and full of promises neither of them had to speak out loud. When they broke apart, Cassie handed him his backpack. Everything's still in there, just like you left it. I know, because I trusted you to keep it safe. He slung it over his shoulder, then took her hand. Come on, I want to take you somewhere. They got off at Union Square and walked through the cold December evening to a small park overlooking the city. Daniel spread his jacket on a bench, and they sat close together, shoulders touching, breath misting in the cold air. I talked to Mr. Kim today, Daniel said. Told him I wanted to start teaching. Community college, maybe. vocational programs for people who want to work with their hands. Daniel, that's amazing. He said he'd write me a recommendation, said I'm one of the best technicians he's trained, and that I'd be wasting my skills if I didn't pass them on. Daniel turned to look at her. I couldn't have done that without you, without knowing someone believed I wasn't failing. You were never failing. You were just finding your way. What about you? He asked. What happens next for Cassie Monroe? She thought about it. Really thought about it. I think I'm going to apply for that promotion again. The one I turned down. Not because I have to, but because I'm ready now. And because I finally understand that I don't have to do it alone. You don't. You've got me. And Trina. And your mom. We're all here. I know. She leaned her head on his shoulder. For the first time in years, I actually know. They sat in silence, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Somewhere below, the subway rumbled through its tunnels, carrying exhausted people home, carrying strangers who might become something more if they were brave enough to look up, to see, to stay. 3 months later, March brought rain and renewal, the kind of soft spring rain that washed winter away and made the city smell like possibility. Cassie stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting her blazer. Today was the interview for the promotion, senior clinical laboratory technician, with a 15% raise and the opportunity to mentor new staff. Her hands trembled slightly as she fastened her mother's gold hoop into her ear. You look beautiful, baby, Sharon said from the doorway. She was moving better now. Physical therapy 3 times a week had given her back most of her mobility. Nervous? Terrified? Good. That means it matters. Sharon crossed the room and placed her hands on her daughter's shoulders. You're going to walk in there and show them exactly who Cassie Monroe is. Not the woman who was drowning. The woman who learned how to swim. Cassie turned and hugged her mother tightly. Thank you. For everything. Thank me by living your life, not just surviving it. The interview lasted 45 minutes. Cassie walked out feeling lighter than she had in years. Her phone buzzed immediately. Daniel, how did it go? Cassie, I think I nailed it. Daniel, of course you did. Celebratory dinner tonight? Cassie, yes, but I picked the place this time. Daniel, deal. I love you. She stopped walking in the middle of the hospital corridor, staring at the screen. They'd never said those words before. Not explicitly, not in text. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. I love you too. That evening, Cassie took Daniel to a small Ethiopian restaurant in Brooklyn she'd been wanting to try for months. They sat on cushioned stools around a low table, sharing injera and laughter, and stories about their days. Mr. Kim officially submitted my recommendation letter, Daniel said between bites. I have interviews at 2 community colleges next week. That's incredible. Which ones? LaGuardia and Borough of Manhattan. Both have vocational programs that need instructors. He paused, setting down his fork. I'm nervous. What if I'm terrible at teaching? You won't be. You're patient. You listen. You make people feel seen. Those are the qualities that matter. Daniel reached across the table and took her hand. I talked to my dad yesterday. He asked how things were going with that girl from New York. I told him you're not that girl. You're the woman I'm going to marry someday. Cassie's breath caught. You told him that? Yeah. And he said, then don't let her wait too long. First piece of advice he's given me in 6 years that actually made sense. Daniel Park, are you proposing to me in an Ethiopian restaurant? Not yet, but I'm letting you know it's coming. So you can't say you weren't warned. Cassie laughed, a full, genuine laugh that came from somewhere deep in her chest. I'll consider myself warned. 2 weeks later, Cassie got the promotion. She celebrated with Trina over lunch, both of them crying into their salads while other hospital staff looked on in confusion. I'm so proud of you, Trina said, gripping Cassie's hand across the table. You fought for this. You earned this. I couldn't have done it without you. without everyone who kept reminding me I was worth more than I thought. Speaking of people who remind you of your worth, Trina raised an eyebrow. When am I officially meeting this Daniel? I've seen him exactly once from across a diner. I need to properly vet the man who's making my best friend glow like a nightlight. Cassie pulled out her phone. This weekend, dinner at my place. You, me, Daniel, and my mom. Fair warning. My mom already loves him because he fixed her kitchen sink last month without being asked. A man who fixes things and makes you happy? Girl, if you don't lock that down. He already told his dad he's marrying me someday. Trina nearly choked on her water. What? Cassie Monroe, you buried the lead. Saturday evening, Cassie's apartment was full of warmth and noise. Trina had brought wine. Sharon had made her famous mac and cheese. Daniel had shown up with flowers and homemade kimchi from his sister. They sat around the small dining table, passing dishes and stories, the conversation flowing easily. Cassie watched Daniel interact with her mother, the gentle way he asked about her physical therapy, the genuine interest in his eyes when she talked about her garden plans for spring. Watched Trina interrogate him with surgical precision about his intentions. So, let me get this straight, Trina said, pointing her fork at Daniel. You saw Cassie exhausted on the subway and your first thought was, I should give up my seat? Not exactly. My first thought was, she looks like she's carrying the world. My second thought was, I should give up my seat. And you just stood there? For 5 stations? Yeah. Why? Daniel glanced at Cassie, something soft in his expression. Because she looked like she needed to sit more than I needed to. And because even then, I think I knew she was going to matter. Trina sat back, nodding slowly. Okay, you pass. Barely. But I'm watching you, Daniel Park. I wouldn't expect anything less. After dinner, Daniel helped Cassie wash dishes while Trina and Sharon talked in the living room. The kitchen was small, barely enough room for 2 people, but they moved around each other with practiced ease. Your family is wonderful, Daniel said, handing her a plate to dry. They like you. Trina's approval is basically impossible to get, so congratulations. Does that mean I'm officially part of this world now? Cassie set down the plate and turned to face him, water dripping from her hands. You've been part of this world since the moment you gave up your seat. You just didn't know it yet. He kissed her, slow and sweet, tasting like wine and promises. When they pulled apart, his forehead rested against hers. I meant what I said at the restaurant, about marrying you. I know. I don't have a ring yet. I want to do it right. But I need you to know, this is it for me. You're it. You're it for me too, Cassie whispered. You've been it since that first subway ride. Maybe even before I was ready to admit it. April arrived with cherry blossoms and new beginnings. Daniel got the job at LaGuardia Community College, teaching vocational mechanics and basic engineering to students who'd chosen hands-on careers over traditional paths. His first day, he came home beaming, telling Cassie about a student who reminded him of himself at 18. He kept apologizing for asking questions, Daniel said as they walked through Prospect Park. Like he thought wanting to understand made him stupid. I told him the same thing you told me. Asking questions means you're brave enough to admit you don't know everything. How did he respond? He smiled. First time I'd seen him smile all class. Cassie squeezed his hand. You're going to change lives, Daniel. I know it. One evening in late April, Daniel asked Cassie to meet him at their bench, the one overlooking the city where they'd sat the night he returned from Korea. She arrived to find the bench covered in string lights, a small picnic basket beside it, and Daniel standing in the center holding a single sunflower. What's all this? She asked, her heart already racing. This is me doing it right. He set down the flower and took both her hands in his. The city stretched out behind them, a million lights against the darkening sky. Cassie Monroe, I gave you my subway seat 4 months ago because you looked like you needed it. But the truth is, I needed it too. I needed someone who saw me for who I was, not who everyone thought I should be. I needed someone brave enough to let me help carry the weight. I needed you." He let go of one hand and reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box. "I don't have a grand speech prepared. I'm not good with big gestures, but I know this. Every single day I want to save you a seat. I want to share umbrellas in the rain and fix your mom's sink and listen to you talk about hematology protocols I don't understand. I want to build a life where home isn't a place. It's us. Together." He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold band with a small diamond that caught the light. "Will you marry me?" Cassie was crying before she could even process the question. "Yes, yes, of course yes." Daniel slid the ring onto her finger and kissed her as the city sparkled around them. Somewhere below, a subway train rumbled through the tunnels, carrying strangers, carrying possibilities, carrying the promise that sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest transformations. Drr. 6 months later. October brought cool air and golden leaves. Cassie stood in front of the full-length mirror in her childhood bedroom, smoothing the simple white dress she'd chosen for today. No cathedral, no 500-person guest list, just a small ceremony in Prospect Park with the people who mattered most. Trina bustled around behind her, adjusting the veil. "You look stunning. Like, unfairly stunning. Daniel's going to lose his mind. I can't believe this is happening. Believe it, girl. You're about to marry the man who gave up his subway seat and accidentally stole your heart." Sharon appeared in the doorway, elegant in a navy dress, tears already threatening to spill. "Oh, baby, you're so beautiful." Cassie turned to her mother, her own eyes burning. "Thank you for pushing me to be brave, for reminding me I deserved to be happy. You did that yourself. I just held up the mirror." The ceremony was small and perfect. 20 people gathered under an oak tree strung with lights. Mr. Kim stood beside Daniel as his best man, his weathered face proud. Sophie, Daniel's sister, officiated with humor and grace. When Cassie walked down the makeshift aisle on her mother's arm, Daniel's face transformed. Pure joy mixed with something close to disbelief, like he couldn't quite believe she was real. They spoke their vows with shaking voices and steady hearts. "I promise to always save you a seat," Daniel said. "I promise to always take it," Cassie replied. The reception was held at the same diner where they'd had their first coffee. The owner had closed it for the evening, decorating the space with string lights and flowers. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't Instagram perfect. But it was theirs. During their first dance, a slow song playing from someone's phone hooked to a portable speaker, Daniel pulled Cassie close. "You know what I keep thinking about?" he whispered. "What?" "That first night. When I stood up and you sat down. I almost didn't do it. I almost stayed in my seat because I thought you'd think it was weird or creepy or some kind of trick. What made you do it anyway? Honestly, I don't know. Instinct, maybe. Or fate. Or just recognizing something in you that I saw in myself. Someone who was tired of pretending they were fine." Cassie rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm glad your instinct won." "Me too. Because if I'd stayed sitting, I would have missed this. All of this." Later that evening, as the party wound down and guests began to leave, Cassie and Daniel slipped away to the subway station. They stood on the platform together, hand in hand, watching trains come and go. "Should we?" Daniel asked, nodding toward the arriving L train. "One more ride?" "One more ride." They stepped into the third car, the same car where everything had started, found 2 seats side by side, sat down close together, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. The train pulled away from the station, rocking gently through the familiar darkness. "You know what's funny?" Cassie said quietly. "What?" "I used to hate this commute. It was just another exhausting part of my day. Something I had to survive. And now? Now it's where I found home." Daniel kissed the top of her head. "Home isn't a place, remember? It's a person who stays. You stayed. I'll always stay." They rode the train all the way to the end of the line and back. When they finally stepped off at Bedford Avenue, the same platform where Cassie had first noticed the man with the worn backpack who didn't perform kindness, who just quietly offered it, they paused. "Ready to start the rest of our lives?" Daniel asked. Cassie looked at her husband, this quiet, steady man who'd seen her exhaustion and offered a seat, who'd seen her fear and offered patience, who'd seen her walls and offered time, who'd taught her that love wasn't about being someone's entire world, but about building a world together. "Yeah," she said, lacing her fingers through his. "I'm ready." They walked out into the Brooklyn night, past corner bodegas and brownstones, past couples arguing and friends laughing, past all the noise and chaos of city life. But they moved through it differently now, not as two people trying to survive, but as two people who'd found each other in the unlikeliest of places and decided to stay. Because sometimes, home isn't the place where you were born or the house where you grew up. Sometimes home is a subway seat offered without expectation, an umbrella shared in the rain, a hand held during turbulence, a person who sees you at your most exhausted and says, simply, beautifully, "Rest. I've got you." And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that person stays. Epilogue, 1 year later, the L train, 6:52 p.m. Cassie and Daniel sat side by side in the third car, her hand resting on the barely visible curve of her stomach, his arm around her shoulders. A young woman entered the car, early 20s, exhausted eyes, scrubs visible under her winter coat. She scanned the crowded space, shoulders slumped under the weight of a day too long and a life too heavy. Daniel caught Cassie's eye. She smiled and nodded. He stood up, adjusted his backpack, and moved toward the door. The seat beside Cassie emptied. The young woman hesitated, just like Cassie had hesitated a year ago, then sat down with a sigh of relief so profound it was almost visible. Cassie caught her eye and offered a small smile. The woman returned it tentatively, then closed her eyes and leaned her head against the window. Daniel watched from his standing position, catching Cassie's reflection in the glass. She was glowing, not from pregnancy, though that was part of it, but from the quiet satisfaction of passing forward what had once been given to her. Kindness without expectation. Space without invasion. The simple revolutionary act of seeing someone and offering them exactly what they need. The train rumbled through the tunnel, carrying its cargo of tired souls toward home, toward rest, toward the possibility that tomorrow might be different, might be lighter, because someone today chose to stand so someone else could sit. And in that choice, in that small gesture repeated across 1,000,000 subway rides in 1,000 cities, lived the truth that Cassie and Daniel had learned. Sometimes the closest thing to home isn't a place at all. It's just someone who stays.